What an unmitigated disaster and insult to every viewer's intelligence the season finale of She-Hulk was. Now, this video was a little ways coming because I had to gather my thoughts. I had to regroup and really put together words to describe how terrible the finale of She-Hulk is. So this video is not about the season 1 of She-Hulk. It's the finale. We'll talk a little bit about the season as we do a recap, but this is the finale. If you don't want to know the ending of the season 1 of She-Hulk, I'm going to be spoiling right here. This is your warning. So if you want to watch this train wreck, be my guest and then come back. The video will be waiting here. But for those of you who are sticking around, let's get into this. So let's start at the beginning. The first episode of She-Hulk was bloody terrible. It was just basically a big, angry feminist rant pointed directly at the audience. And it's better left forgotten. The rest of the show kind of settled into this area of mediocrity as it went into this kind of episodic legal show with comedy that didn't land more often than it did land, and some dodgy CGI on the main character. But I felt there was a decent premise there. The idea of a law show set in a superhero universe, I think, is interesting enough. So I kind of figured if they could put together an okay season, stick a good, interesting season finale, maybe in between 1 and 2, they could find some better writers and get some real comedy writers, maybe even somebody who knows a little bit about the law to come in and make their stories make a little bit more sense. But I think there was a foundation there that they could build on. And they had a kind of a connective tissue storyline about the Intelligentsia being the super secret internet group that had a grudge against She-Hulk that wanted to get a sample of her blood for whatever reason. And that's a villain from the comic books. The Intelligentsia in Marvel are kind of like a group of mad scientist supervillains that want to bring down the Hulks or get samples of them so they can make an army of them, whatever. It kind of changes, but that's who the Intelligentsia is in the books. So I was kind of excited about the potential introduction of the Intelligentsia. So the story went along. We get to the second to last episode, which was the best episode of the season. And that's the Daredevil episode, which should tell you something, that the best character in the show is a character from another Marvel show who's in it for 1 episode. But Daredevil shows up. They have kind of a legal rivalry, then become friends, and ultimately have a little bit of a fling. And that sets up the event that's going to lead us into the finale, which is She-Hulk is being honored with some kind of award for being a lady lawyer or something. And the Intelligentsia takes this ceremony where she's being honored as her opportunity to strike. And it turns out that a date with a guy that she went on actually was an agent of the Intelligentsia. He copied her cell phone. They publish her personal information all over the internet. And he had secretly recorded their after-date activities and released a sex tape during the ceremony, causing She-Hulk to go into a Hulk smash mode. And she just flips out, goes enraged at the dinner in front of all of her peers and law enforcement from Los Angeles, and that's where that episode ends. So now here we are, season finale. Starts off in the direct aftermath of Jen's rampage. So pretty much everyone's turned her back on her. She's lost her job. The only people she's got left are her closest inner circle friends, and she's in a supervillain prison. And she gets out of the prison soon enough. They put an ankle bracelet on her that will monitor her. And if she turns into the She-Hulk, military will be alerted. She is not allowed to turn into She-Hulk ever again. And she's sent home to basically just kind of get her defense ready. So she decides the best way to do that would be to go to the Abomination's retreat. Now, the Abomination is an old Hulk villain. She got him out of jail in one of the early episodes, and he started off this kind of new agey Zen retreat for former supervillains or anybody who wants to come and relax. So she decides to visit him and get her mind together while she prepares to defend herself in court. And that's where things start going off the rails. It turns off the Intelligentsia is also at the retreat, and they're having some meeting there. And we start learning the answers about the Intelligentsia. And it turns out the Intelligentsia aren't an awesome supervillain group led by mad scientists and red Hulks and other things. It's this guy, who was a weird little sad guy who went on a date with She-Hulk after meeting up with her on Tinder and really wanted to get with her, but she kind of dismissed him as a joke and left him alone. And so now he's formed the Intelligentsia, which is really just a group of internet trolls who complain about female superheroes all the time. In fact, when you see them talking together, all they're doing is complaining about Jane Foster Thor and Captain Marvel being a Mary Sue, and basically what people on the internet say about a lot of MCU projects. So ultimately, you guessed it, what the writers have done is they've taken the critics of their own show and made them supervillains in the show, in some kind of cringy, wannabe meta excuse for poor writing. So the Intelligentsia is just the critics of the She-Hulk show, and that's when the brawl starts. And Abomination shows up, Hulk shows up and fights the Abomination. This guy injects himself with She-Hulk's blood and turns into internet troll Hulk bro guy, and just starts kind of stumbling and making a fool of himself on the stage. And then just a massive fight breaks out. Titania shows up. And then this is where I really just had to check to make sure I was even still awake and not just dreaming this in some sick fever dream. But She-Hulk stops the episode and pauses it. And then she punches her way out of the Disney Plus streaming menu and starts wandering around a studio in Burbank. Professional writers wrote this. And then she finds herself in the writing room of her own show where the writers have inserted themselves as characters. And she starts complaining that her finale is bad. And so the writers say, well, it's not our fault. We don't have control over it. You have to talk to Kevin, which obviously is a reference to Kevin Feige, the head of the MCU. So she wanders around the studio some more, and she gets an appointment with Kevin, who in this world is an artificial intelligence that calculates what people want out of their superhero viewing experience. And her and Kevin proceed to rewrite her episode because she doesn't want it to follow regular superhero tropes. That's not the show she wants to make. She thinks that she should be able to settle this with her mind as a lawyer, and she doesn't think Hulk should be there because she doesn't need him to save her, and she thinks Daredevil should somehow be involved and that everyone should just go to jail. So she comes back into the episode, but now when she comes back, the Intelligentsia are just arrested. Like, you don't see them get defeated. You don't even see how the one guy's no longer a Hulk. He's just now in cuffs and being hauled off in a police car, along with the rest of the internet troll Intelligentsia guys. And the Abomination is being arrested for violating his parole and transforming into the Abomination. And then Daredevil just kind of appears and it's like, hey, babe, I'm still here. We should go meet your family or something. And so they do. And after a little wink and a nod to the audience, they go to like a family barbecue where she's introducing Daredevil to her friends, and like everything's just fine. No resolution, just everything I guess worked out. Apparently she's not a fugitive anymore, I guess. And so saving the best insult for last, Hulk shows up to introduce us to his son, Scar. This is Scar. This sad little shy coquettish surfer boy is supposed to be Scar. And that's it. That's the season finale of She-Hulk. What can I even say about this? It's just absolute farce. It's a nonsense. Oh, I don't have words. I gave it a week and I still don't have words. Now, I know what a lot of people who are defending this episode want to say to me. They're screaming at their screens. I can hear it. But She-Hulk breaks the fourth wall all the time. In the comics, she used to tear her way out and talk to her writers. That's one of her things. So the show is just doing something from the comics. Well, obnoxious voice, let me answer that. Yes, She-Hulk has always been a fourth wall breaking character. She was Deadpool before Deadpool. So, but the difference here is, if the comic book was written by a guy named John Byrne, who is a master storyteller. He is one of the best to ever do the job. And when he would have She-Hulk kind of break out of the comic and talk to him directly, it was always kind of a storytelling device used to hammer down a point that he was trying to make in the story. His She-Hulk run is often misunderstood. The entire thing is a commentary on modern comics at the time, the comic book industry, and women in comics. And every now and then she would address the audience or address him directly, and then they would make a point to kind of move the story along. She didn't like how this was going. She didn't like the artwork in this book. She didn't like that there was a fill-in, whatever. She would have her complaints, but there were still rules. At the end, she would always have to climb back into her comic and finish out her story. It's just every now and then the cleverness would come from there'd be a concession or there'd be a little wink and nod or change. Like, for example, she would complain that she would always get into these big superhero fights before she's about to fight something and say that by the end of the issue, her costume is shredded and she's barely wearing anything. And so the trade-off would be she has to go back in the episode or into the issue, finish her comic, but her costume by the end of the book will remain pristine. And that was kind of the writer giving her her olive branch. That's how it was used back then. It wasn't used to resolve the plot of the story. It wasn't used to defeat the villain. That's not how that works. There's still rules. The world still worked. The story could still be immersive because you knew she still had to find her own way to overcome whatever the problem was. And then there's just the way they did it here. Is she still a fugitive? Does she still have the ankle bracelet? Is she still fired? Did the intelligentsia get her blood or not? Did the sex tape get released, or was that written out of the episode when she was talking to Kevin? There's no rules to this crap anymore. Nothing makes sense. You can't follow this story because what are the stakes? Thanos could show up with the Infinity Gauntlet and she could just decide to exit the episode and have Kevin write him out of the episode, or just come back and Thanos is defeated and she's got the glove. I mean, there's nothing to get invested for here. There's no stakes when the character can literally write her own story like she's got the Book of Destiny. It's stupid. It's lazy. It's hack writing at its worst. And it just demonstrates how terrible the writing staff is, not to mention the Disney Plus editorial team who approved this dreck. And then you have Scar, this sad little... I don't understand what I'm even looking at here. This is Scar. Scar is a guy who was born to a dead mother on a dying world and had to raise himself and learn to survive with only his Hulk rage to sustain him. He can't interact with people because he is too savage. That's who that character is. He's not some guy that you just bring to a barbecue. That's ridiculous. So they've ruined Scar's character, and by the Planet Hulk storyline, I mean, any potential for exploring that's been completely ruined and wasted. And no, I don't want to have them go back and see what happened to him on Planet Hulk, knowing he's just going to show up with Scar at a family barbecue at the end. That's not fun. Not everything needs to be a prequel. So what can we take from this? Well, we can take that She-Hulk was an absolute piece of cinematic garbage that seems to have been written by children who have no idea how to tell a coherent story. I mean, good Lord. Like I said, I thought this season was mediocre, barely watchable, but had the foundations of a good show, and they absolutely tore that to the ground as they just crapped the bed as badly as you could with this steaming dump of a finale. My God, I mean, people have been saying that She-Hulk is just one of the last nails in the coffins of the MCU, and after watching this finale, I have a hard time arguing against it. I really, really do. So that's it. That's my review of the absolutely nonsensical, dumber than a dead hamster season finale of She-Hulk. But I want to know what you guys think. Did you guys watch the finale? What did you think? Were you a fan of the show? Were you not a fan of the show? Or what? More importantly, were you enjoying it? And then how did the finale turn the experience for you? Did you think the finale was great and you're sad there's not going to be season 2? Or like me and just figured the finale was just slip on a banana peel, fall on your face, and die stupid? Tell me in the comments below. While you're down there, please do all the usual YouTube stuff, like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber, and I'm going to leave it there. I will see you at the next video. Talk to you then. Bye.